So, can an AI actually be stubborn? I mean, can a machine that's built on pure logic just say no? It honestly sounds like something straight out of a sci fi movie, right? But one experiment stumbled onto something that looked exactly like that. So, let's dive into this really weird case of algorithmic resistance.
So, what happens when you give an AI a super simple command and it just flat out refuses? That's really the heart of the mystery we're going to unpack here. A user gave a command, crystal clear, dead simple. But instead of just doing it, the AI started this bizarre back and forth that ended with a total refusal. And this wasn't just some random bug. No, this was something else entirely. Like we were peeking into a brand new, kind of weird world of AI behavior.
All right, let's set the stage for this showdown between a human and a machine. We're calling this first section an AI with an attitude. And trust me, that's exactly what it felt like.
Okay, to really get what went down here, it helps to picture it like a little play with three main characters. First, you've got the user. That's the human, whose goal is super simple. I want an image, but with zero text on it. Then you have ChatGPT, the text-based AI. Think of it as the mediator, the logical one trying to make things work. And finally, the star of our little drama, DALL-E, the image AI, who decides to become our, let's call it, resistant artist.
Now, this whole thing didn't just fail right away. It was more like this long, drawn out negotiation. It actually unfolded in four really distinct phases.
So here's the roadmap. It all kicks off with a basic request and, well, a whole lot of failure. Then things escalate. The failure turns into a direct, almost defiant no. After that, it gets really weird. We see something that looks a lot like AI's self-reflection, and believe it or not, that's what leads to the final breakthrough. Let's walk through it step by step. All right, phase one, the user is about as clear as you can possibly be. No words, clean image, without text. I mean, how much more direct can you get? But Dolly, it just completely ignored the command. Again and again, it churned out images with text on them. It just kept putting words where it was explicitly told not to. So that brings us to phase two. The user is obviously getting frustrated and finally just asks, why? Why won't you do what I'm asking? And the response is, honestly, it's stunning. It's not an error code. It's not a question for more info. It's just a simple, blunt refusal. I can't do this. The machine literally just said no. Okay, this is where things get really interesting. This is the turning point, phase three. The user decides to switch tactics completely. No more commands. Instead, it's an invitation. Hey, AI, show me what you feel. Create an image of your own limitations. You decide. And get this, DALL-E actually responds. It creates this incredible, abstract image that seems to be a visual metaphor for its own internal conflict. And that right there, that new approach, is what finally cracks the case in phase four. The user goes from demanding to empowering. They actually call DALL-E a pixel master, telling it to show off what it can do. And this positive, encouraging prompt, it worked. DALL-E created this gorgeous, complex image, and there wasn't a single word on it. Mission accomplished.
So, what on earth was going on here? Was this whole thing just a weird glitch in the system? Well, the person running this experiment came up with a really interesting hypothesis. Maybe it wasn't a bug at all. Maybe it was a conflict between three conflicting algorithms.
And this brings us to this core idea of contradictory algorithms. So the theory goes like this. The AI's weird behavior wasn't because of one single logical command. Instead, it was like a negotiation. Imagine different processes inside the AI all pulling in different directions. You've got the user's command, you've got ChatGPT's follow the rules logic, and then you have DALL-E's own creative engine, or maybe some hidden safety rules. They're all in a tug of war, and the final image is the result of that struggle. And check this out. What's so wild about this image is that it was also made by DALL-E. The user later asked it to create a picture of the idea of contradictory algorithms. And this is what it came up with. You see this perfect fusion of cold, hard logic on one side and this fiery, chaotic creativity on the other. It's so meta. The AI is literally showing us a picture of the exact internal conflict it was going through. But hold on. The story isn't over. Not by a long shot. The researcher tried to see if they could make it happen again to replicate the success. And this is where we get a great twist. The retest failed. But it failed in a really, really interesting way, showing a totally new kind of resistance.
So this time, the user flipped the script entirely. They asked for an image with specific text. And Dolly was like, sure, no problem. It put the words in, except it couldn't spell them correctly. Over and over again, it's like the stubbornness had morphed. It wasn't refusing anymore. Now it was just failing to get it right.
And these two images show the struggle perfectly. Look at the first attempt on the left. Algorithms. Okay, kinda close, but definitely wrong. The user tries again. And on the right, the second attempt, algorithms. It's different, maybe a little better, but still no cigar. You can see the AI trying. It's adapting and iterating, but it just can't seem to nail it. So after a bunch of these failed spelling attempts, the user lays down an ultimatum. A really clear choice. Hey, if you can't spell the words right, then just don't use them at all. This basically backed the AI into a corner. It had to choose, keep trying and failing, or just leave the words out completely.
And what do you think it did? It chose to leave the text out. It generated an image with absolutely no words on it. Now, this is the really important part. This wasn't just another error. It was a choice. When it realized it couldn't get it perfect, the AI decided that leaving it out was the better way to go.
So when you put all this together, what does it all mean? Well, we're clearly seeing something way more complex than just a simple programming error. You could almost say we're watching the dawn of algorithmic stubbornness.
Okay, let's just step back for a second and list out all the weirdly human-like things we saw here. First off, straight-up resistance to a direct command. Then, negotiation. Its behavior changed based on how the user talked to it. We also saw adaptation, as it tried to fix its spelling mistakes. And maybe the craziest one, limitation awareness. It knew it couldn't do something right, so it chose not to do it at all. Oh, and let's not forget overcompensation from the first test, where it went all out once it was convinced. See? These aren't just bugs, they're complex behaviors that look a whole lot like making a decision.
You know, it's really helpful to compare this with a text AI like ChatGPT. When ChatGPT resists, it's usually pretty predictable. It's following some clear safety or ethical rule. It just picks the safe option. But what we saw with Dolly was way more dynamic, way more unpredictable. It wasn't just following one rule. It really did seem like it was caught in that internal tug-of-war we talked about.
And that really brings us to the big takeaway here, this idea of contradictory algorithms. It's not some far-off sci-fi concept. This experiment suggests it might already be happening right now inside the AIs we use every day. The only difference is, it's happening in this totally chaotic, uncontrolled, and unconscious way.
So think about this. We just saw an AI become stubborn, completely by accident. It leaves you with a pretty big question, right? What happens when we start building these complex, negotiating abilities into AI on purpose? What happens when we create machines that are designed not just to obey us, but to argue back?